Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth your time and bandwidth. Today's game is the Muv-Luv Trilogy, a genre-shifting romance split into 3 parts. Is the oddly named Muv-Luv worth reading through? Let's find out. Muv-Luv is a trilogy of visual novel stories that is nearly 20 years old now, and finally released officially in English a few years back. And you have to play all 3 combined in order to really get the full experience, so I'm going to review them all together. On Steam or Vita, they sell the first 2 as a pair and the third on its own, which makes sense as the first 2 combined are about as long as the third one. Also, there will be some very minor spoilers, but nothing that will ruin the experience in this review. The first game is Muv-Luv Extra, which is a straight harem romance visual novel. Our protag Shirogane and his childhood friend Kagami have their lives mixed up when the ultra-rich Maya appears in Shirogane's house and clearly wants his body. What follows is a bunch of non-sequiturs in kind of slice of life style, with 3 other girls also vying for attention. It's about as basic as it comes, with Shirogane being both obliviously stupid, wishy-washy, and an absolute ass to all his so-called friends, yet they all want him for whatever reasons. The game does seem somewhat self-aware on how heavily it leans into the early 2000s era romance tropes, with stuff getting so outrageous it remains entertaining. The second game's Unlimited, and that's where things start mixing up. Shirogane wakes up after the hot springs trip in Extra to find he's now in an alternate dimension where aliens called Beta are at war with Earth, and his previous classmates are all now cadets in mech school. What follows is an extensive training sequence where our weak-ass harem protag actually has to man up for once, and it's very funny to see him actually suck compared to the waifus. The now sci-fi Gundam story unfortunately seems to end right when it gets interesting, as once it's done with training it rushes to a conclusion that clearly was hinting at a final chapter to tie everything together, making Unlimited feel a bit like the unwanted middle chapter. Alternative is the final piece. After Unlimited, Shirogane once again wakes up and it seems he's been tossed back in time to the start of Unlimited, except he now has all his previous knowledge of what's going to happen. The first half of Alternative is basically a sped up version of Unlimited, except Shirogane has a strategy guide and God mode enabled, which is pretty funny. The second half, the crap really hits the fan, with the Beta War finally entering fruition and some really gnarly stuff taking place. Also connecting Alternative not only with Unlimited, but also Extra in some really unique ways as it rockets to its conclusion. Across all 3 games, you'll be making choices, though the amount and their impact on the story diminishes as the games get more and more linear. Extra has the usual tons of sometimes seemingly arbitrary choices to get to the one girl you want, which often changes the last third of the game, while both Unlimited and Alternative really only have one key choice that affects who you end up with, and the plot continues regardless. I have more to say, but we'll toss that into the pros and cons. So suffice to say, Muv-Luv is a genre-jumping early 2000s visual novel that goes from romance to romance with mechs, while reusing the same character archetypes across both. So what did I like about the Muv-Luv Trilogy? Well, this game has some really fantastic production values, not only being fully voiced and having a really great soundtrack, but some incredible animation set pieces that feel straight out of something with full animation. It might be the highest production visual novel I've ever read. Additionally, the genre switch is a clever idea. The prospect of taking a typical junky high school harem and tossing them into a post-apocalyptic mecha military story is clever, especially with how they all tie together. And lastly, the latter half of the third game is an absolute wild ride, so much so it almost feels like a totally different game series, with the culmination of everything these games has built up to leading to some incredible payoffs. When it comes to the bad, the amount of VN bloat here is insane, with concepts being constantly over-explained, and what's even more damning is the game loves interrupting what should be potent emotional moments to infodump about its made-up science or world building. Additionally, while I liked the side characters, oddly enough, most development they get is in the alternate routes and Extra, as both Unlimited and Alternative basically just replay the same character beats that were in the previous 2 games just truncated, which unfortunately means a lot of the side characters get less interesting as the story progresses. And lastly, there's some content that really took me out of the story here, even in the censored version that has less fan service. The cadet suits are clearly designed for horny readers in mind, but mostly that's a scene in Chapter 9 of Alternative that was so out of left field, it genuinely made me question authorial intent around other fan servicey stuff, and not in a positive way. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale. Must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And I'll be honest, Muv-Luv is a bit of an enigma to me. Its genre swap from dopey harem romance to dopey harem romance with mechs to straight up sci-fi horror action is intriguing, but it is bogged down significantly by VN bloat that buries the game's best bits. The side characters start interesting, but repetition grinds any development to a crawl, and the third game info dumping the world building and pseudoscience makes getting to its more provocative moments tedious. That being said, those moments are incredible, as Alternative has a ton of really solid stuff, but because of what you have to bog through, I can really only recommend this one to hardcore visual novel fans, as those not familiar with the genre will probably give up early. And that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Have you read through the Muv-Luv games? I learned after I wrote this review that Alternative is one of the highest rated VNs ever, which honestly kind of surprised me. But hey, if you love it, I want to know why you do in the comments. So please let me know. And regardless, if you like VNs, go out there and maybe give the Muv-Luv Trilogy a chance.